overscheduled, and both were too important to cancel. So I just finished the first important thing, and now we're rolling into the second important thing. And this second important thing is something that I believe that you should be paying careful attention to. I know that I'm going to be paying careful attention to. And what we're going to be talking today about, we're going to be talking to Joe Fier and Matt Wolfe, and we're going to be talking about podcasting. And these two guys are really my go-to guys and really some of the world's best experts on podcasting. And they're my go-to guys on podcasting as well. In fact, I want to create a podcast. They've been kicking me to try and get me started. I'm just dragging my feet. But what I want to do is I want to create a Steal Our Winners podcast where basically what I'm doing is I'm just extending each interview, but what I'm talking about are not the tactics that are currently crushing it, which stays in Steal Our Winners, but in fact, maybe like the best tactic that they ever learned and what was the implication of that and what's the big takeaway of that. So like 15 or 20 minute little kind of, smaller podcast that really would support Steal Our Winners probably better than almost anything I could do, including even these live streams. And so with that said, and, also just real quick, and then I will promise to hand it over, is that like you'd have to be living under a rock to not know that like Joe Rogan was paid over $100 million from Spotify. Also, that I forget the name of that podcast that started on Barstool Sports, the one by the two girls that now it's just one girl, but she got paid $60 million for her podcast to jump over to Spotify. So, podcasting and YouTube combined is really where like Hollywood and where like the most mass kind of entertainment are going to be pulled from. And that's one of the reasons why I want to be on YouTube and have a podcast. I'm not suggesting I'll be the next Joe Rogan or the next whatever her name is, but I also know that if we're not there, the likelihood is it'll never happen. It might not ever happen anyway, but my business can still grow just by being there. And who knows, maybe, in a couple of years from now, you guys will remember me speaking about this as you watch me in some action film or who knows what. So anyway, so these are the two go-to guys as it relates to podcasting. We're going to be talking all about how to start, grow, monetize, and profit from your podcast. And I can't think of two better people to kind of show you the ropes and kind of walk us all through it. So with all that said, Joe Fier, Matt Wolfe, and take it over, guys.
Thanks, Rich. No, you had a busy morning, man. So we'll steer the ship. And you're always drinking on some Stoke, right? Is that what you?
Yes.
Oh man, I love
my
that
favorite brand. It's my favorite brand.
Love it, man. Yeah. So this session, I think it's gonna be a fun one. We're gonna cover all sorts of angles on this. So I think the first half we're deciding is kind of speaking to everyone. I mean, we're going to speak to you watching as well. But if you don't have a podcast, if you maybe don't even think that podcasting isn't even on your radar, stick around with us, because the first half we're going to talk about what you're doing, probably with content you're already sitting on. If content's a big thing for your business, if you see results from email marketing, blog posts, YouTube videos, all that stuff, we're going to show you how that all plays part of this whole conversation with podcasting, and it's all connected. So, we did a cool session with you, Rich. I know on Steal Our Winners 2 months ago, maybe a month ago or so.
Months ago.
So that one we'll be touching on some of that stuff, and that's kind of more the broader strokes. And then second half, we do have a program that dives deep into this, like Rich mentioned. It's called PodHacker. So, for the folks interested in launching a show, but also just folks who have a podcast already want to do a little bit more optimized. I would say it's more we're trying to take the outside approach. It's almost like the Rich Schefren, Jay Abraham approach of podcasting. Think a little strategically with what we're doing with our time and efforts. There's not a lot of podcasters who are doing that. They're just cranking content out. So don't be like that,
No, don't be like that. So where should we start all this? And what I would suggest, guys, is that I think we should go about like a half hour, and then we should give people I'll give them a link for your program. And I think we should kind of put that kind of give a call to action every 30 minutes or so.
Sure.
Because people tune in and tune out. And for everyone watching, if you feel the love, then please give a thumbs up. comment. Those things help us. If you feel so inclined, share. And if you share, put hashtag shared in the chat so that we can thank you personally. And if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe. If you're watching on Facebook, join Strategic Profits. If you're watching on LinkedIn, then just follow us and connect with us. So with all that said, guys, take over once again.
Well, I'm looking at the comments, man. And yeah, Call Me Daddy was that.
Yes,
podcast.
that was it.
Thank you, Jacob. That's actually our podcast editor and content extraordinaire. So he's joining in the chat.
Yeah, not just call her daddy. Dax Shepard from Armchair Expert just got a deal with Spotify, and then Barack Obama does a podcast with, is it Bruce Springsteen?
Yeah,
and that's on Spotify now too. And then
the celebs are taking over for sure.
And then Apple's made a whole bunch of deals lately with other podcasters. It's definitely the place to be. There's a lot of exciting movement happening in the podcasting world right now.
Yeah. So what I'll put out there for you watching is definitely use the comments. So on Facebook, YouTube, and you guys are so good at this stuff anyway. And I know Rich will put comments on the screen. So we want to make it very interactive. That's just going to make it great for all of us. So take a little nugget out of Molly Mahoney's bag. She's always schooling us on like, hey, if you have a nugget, put hashtag nugget or something in the comments.
Yes.
I don't know if Rich, if you got something cool, but there you go. Yeah, Misty. So that's just going to light us up here and make sure we're on the right path. So I would say kick it all off. We'll get into us, but we're not really the important ones here. You are, of course. So.
No. You're the more important ones today, my friends.
I know.
You go. Yes. I'm just with the crowd. Like, I'm here to learn and take notes. I've got my index cards. I got my pen. I am ready to learn just side by side with everyone else. And my daughter's here too. So it's not only me, but it's obviously a family affair.
I didn't know if that was me and my daughter.
Yeah, it could be any of ours, I guess, but I assume it's mine because she's always checking in. And yes, I am a little bit on the autistic side for those that don't know. So Jacob wants to know what's up. Call Me Daddy is what Spotify bought. And Renan is our hero because he just shared it.
Yeah, you are.
And greetings from Monterrey, Mexico. South Africa. Gunther is from South Africa. Kayvon shared it, and the comments keep rolling in. Right now, we have 62 people watching. We have 28 on Facebook, 31 on YouTube, and then 3 in the Strategic Profits group. And we don't get numbers from LinkedIn, so we could have 10,000 watching right now on LinkedIn.
I think
and we would not know.
Let's assume we do.
Yeah, we do. Well, yeah. So everyone who is watching right now, throw in the chat right now, if you have a podcast, throw it in there. If you've been thinking about having a podcast, share it in the chat. Be a little, just talk about yourself a little bit. Tell us if you have a show, what your show is called, what you're doing in this space. And if you don't have a podcast, throw in a comment around there if like, hey, I just love content in general. Like if there's just think about what you do in your business consistently for content. We want that to be top of mind for you. So if it's blogging, if it's YouTubing, if it's some kind of other audio form thing, email marketing, throw it in the comments because that's all assets that we can use in this conversation we're about to have. And we'll kick it off and show you kind of this big old map of how you can leverage what you're already doing a little bit more strategically, hence thinking like Rich over here. So let's get into, I got some slides I'll pull in on screen as you guys throw the comments in there, light it up and we'll throw them on screen, but let's see what we got. Let me just make sure.
Yeah. And as you throw them on screen, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make your slides full screen and then I'll just bring it back when it's more back to you, like both of us.
Sweet. Are they on screen right now? I can't tell.
Not yet.
Okay.
You have to, you should see share on the bottom. You see that? Do you see it?
We just turned off the sharing.
Let me try it one more time. Just hide the button. Window slides. Aha.
Oh, and then I got to add it to the stream, and there you go. So actually, I'll just be up here with you two, and you guys might have to sit a little bit closer together where your arms actually touch each other. And there you go.
Oh, he's gonna zoom it out. There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. We're good enough here. We're basically brothers from another mother anyway. So here we go. Kicking this bad boy off. This is a talk I feel like we like to kick it off this way because we're used to talking to non-podcasters, people that just don't really have it. Maybe they got content of some sort, email marketing list, like we're saying, blog, YouTube, something like that. Keep that in mind as you're going through here, because you can leverage existing content and repackage it. You can reorganize it. There's a lot of different things to do. And through the years of us podcasting, what we started back in 2009, I believe it was. Podcasting.
Yeah, our first show came out in 2010. But we might have been messing around with it in 2009.
Yeah, so we actually, Rich, so we came across you and the manifesto back in whenever that
around that same time.
Yeah, 08, 09 or so. And that's what actually kickstarted us into this whole game. And Alex Jeffries being our first mentor right along with you.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that Alex was your first mentor. That's
man.
really cool.
That's I know he goes deep with you. So yeah, I mean, your stuff was way over our heads at that, in the very beginning. We had no clue what I was reading, but that thinking in the systems and all that organization has really turned into this. So we've been marketers first. That's always what we've been interested in the most in. And we just always have liked to, we were looking at old videos yesterday, and we used to just sit around in Matt's old garage, his first house, and we had these Suzuki Samurais. We'd sit around and just talk crap about whatever we're learning. It'd be like the Tony Robbins videos we're watching, the Frank Kern videos in his surfer days, probably some of Rich's videos. We didn't know what we were talking about, but we were just rehashing what we learned and sharing it to the 10 people on YouTube. But with cut off shirts, Corona beers, it was just horrible.
There's actually clips of it in our most recent video that went on YouTube. Actually. Yeah. So it's fresh.
Yeah. But that was I think that was our breeding ground, our testing ground for curating content, because we had Brian Kurtz on the podcast recently, Titans. I mean, he's been around forever. And he was like, man, yeah, you got podcasting, and especially the way that we're doing a lot of interview shows you're a curator at the end of the day. You're on the hunt for amazing gems and nuggets and all these things to share with the world. And you're the one in the driver's seat to make that, to actually share that. So you, Rich, right now at this live stream every single week, multiple times, sometimes you're the ultimate curator,
Yep. It's, but it's, I think that once people kind of get into the swing of things, it becomes something that they look forward to doing, because, you get the chance to really make an impact and share exciting ideas. And I know for probably many people watching, I know it's certainly the case for me. For the most part, my family and my girlfriend, Kim, not that interested in the inner workings of online marketing. There's no one who I can share that with other than you guys. And so this is my outlet to share stuff that I'm excited about, that my family looks at me like I have a second head or something like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, it's working. So don't rock the boat there. I guess I can stay right here. But yeah, man, I mean, it's knowing your audience and knowing which lives are you going to really affect with the content you're putting out. I think that mind shift there took us a couple of years to get into the podcasting, but that gave us a lot more momentum, or really passion behind what we do, because we're changing lives. Not only are we learning a ton through the podcast and the mentors that we're bringing on, but I mean, think about the ripple effect from everyone taking action from what they learn. So make sure to take action on this live stream and all the other ones. So podcasting came into the picture for us. Yeah, that was more like 2010. Mm-hmm. And we've had far too many shows. Most of them died off now. You got anything to say on this, Matt?
No, I mean, you're on a good roll.
Cool. All right. Just making sure I'm not passing anything over. Affiliate marketing has always been the thing that we love to do. Being promoters and curators, it's like a natural byproduct of the content. So we love just promoting other people's stuff, our buddies' things. So that's kind of us in a nutshell, and why I just wanted to put that all out there as the foundation of what you're going to learn here is built on this pretty much. So
yeah, and just before you even go any further, I also just want to stress the point that if you're naturally a curious person, think about at the end of the day, what having a podcast allows you to do. It allows you to reach out to people that you probably could not have a conversation with, and get a conversation with these people, and then make money on the fact that you're getting paid to learn, if you're curious, right, from people that you greatly respect. And that's not a bad thing to be, right? There's never a time for me when I'm doing Steal Our Winners interviews, which is not a podcast, but kind of the same kind of same kind of delivery mechanism, you could say. Any day where I'm doing a Steal Our Winners interview, I'm excited to walk the 12 steps to my office here, because I know that for a good portion of my day, I'm going to get to learn something really valuable, and I'm getting paid to do this, and then I'm getting thanked for it as well. So it's I get to do my favorite thing, I get to get paid, and I get to learn. I'm smarter because of it, and I'm wealthier because of it. And I can't eat while I'm doing it, so I guess I'm thinner because of it too. So,
you're good. Yeah,
all good, all around.
When we first started our podcast, we started it with the intention of networking, using it as a systematic networking tool, because when you have a podcast, inevitably people say, hey, you should have so-and-so on the podcast. Let me intro you. So it's this very systematic networking tool where you get to connect with anybody you can imagine, and then you also get to pick people's brains. So we for the first year, we essentially used our podcast as a free consulting thing. We just went after all the people that had what we wanted in business or had achieved what we wanted in business and interviewed them and picked their brain, and we got to do that for free, and we got to become friends with them. So we went into this going, if we never make money off of this podcast, all of those intangibles are still worth it. So even when you go into a podcast, you can think of it from a perspective of, if you never make a penny off the podcast, it's still going to be an invaluable resource for you.
Yeah, I would totally agree. And I do think that, while I'm not asking you to answer this question right now, but I think there was a good question posted that I would love, if you could answer over the next 2 hours. And that's this one here that I'm going to throw up on screen. Interview podcasts seem like a dime a dozen. How do you differentiate yourself from the crowd? Right? Because obviously it's not as just easy. Oh, I'll just interview some people and everything's going to be wonderful. Right. So, I know that it might not be the right time right now for you to address that, but just kind of, place a mental note on that.
Yeah, that was I think it was Christopher, right?
Yeah. So, Dr. Christopher Vogelman.
Hey, Vogelman. I like it. So, yeah, man. I mean, that's a common objection, I guess, when it comes to these things. But Rich, you kind of nailed it. And we'll layer the answer to your question throughout this whole live stream. But curiosity, your personal curiosity, is the thing that differentiates. And whatever the mechanism, the reason why you would even do an interview show is going to be enough to be different enough. I mean, to bring the value to yourself and then to your audience. But you'll see later how that's all connected. So, yeah, I mean, everything that you just said, Rich, on the live stream, that's just another form of podcasting, and maybe the SOW podcast in the future. So, strategies. Let's get through some tactical stuff first. So we have 3 main strategies, and this is, again, kind of more broad, and it's using podcasting as the core thing, but keep content in mind, something they are consistently making right now.
Yeah, these strategies are specifically how a podcast can turn into income, or how content can turn into income. These are actually some slides from a presentation where we were speaking more specifically towards general content,
right.
And then we're actually going to dive deeper into specifically podcasting here in a minute. But these are specifically how to monetize content.
Yeah, so free content, turning that paid. In tons of different ways. We talk about, online memberships, continuity, physical newsletters, also just connecting your content to offers in general. That's where affiliate marketing can really come into play and help you out. Maybe just cover some costs. That could be a good starting point, with affiliate marketing. And then you can do some funky email marketing and automations with tagging and really segmenting your list in a smart way with content. We're doing a lot of that. So at the end of the day, everything that we do, pretty much anything we do, this live stream included, is fuels our business. It's all content, and it's not just content for content's sake. You don't want to just start slapping things together, but with intent and with it connected in a smart way. And that comes to thinking about the journey in a nutshell. It's always thinking, what's the next step? It's the call to action. You want to, most people are always forgetting a call to action on most piece of content. So that's just number one. Always have a call to action, but before you even create any content, what's the next thing that people should know about, or where are they currently in their journey? So you're always speaking to them right then and there. And then knowing, hey, this episode could lead to a lead magnet or a blog post or a Facebook group or something, but there's an intention behind everything you create.
And before you go any further, guys, before you break down that diagram, just one quick thing is for people to recognize that, technology consistently evolves, marketing consistently evolves. And, I did a live stream about like a month and a half ago with the founder and chairman or CEO of Conversion AI. Nice. And just yesterday, I was talking to Reed Florin, and he gave me a bunch of macros, like how I can use my slide deck to just press a button and like get something written. Mm-hmm. And so I just want everyone who's hearing this to consider that as written content becomes more like, I guess, harder to differentiate. Right. As we have these kind of tools that can write for us and really kind of make it very, very simple to push out. I mean, this past weekend, I was in Nashville at the Traffic and Funnels Mastermind, and I met a few people, Sierra and someone else, who have written books in a weekend using Conversion AI. So when the written word becomes more commoditized, right? What is going to become more valuable is audio and video. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's so vital to have Matt and Joe here, because like you don't have to be a genius to see the writing on the wall as far as it relates to written content. And eventually it might even happen to audio and video as well. I mean, there's tools like the Script where you can already edit video and audio, but we're not at this time yet where you can just like press a button and I can have a version of Rich like on screen talking of stuff that I've never said that I don't even have to get in front of a camera.
We're not that far off though.
Yeah, it'll be some time, but so I just want people to think about like when the written word becomes commoditized, how is your business going to thrive when more and more people are coming online looking for information, and you want to get people to know, like, and trust you, and yet the mechanism that you're using is something that anyone could use that doesn't differentiate yourself in any major way. So with that, I just wanted to kind of stress that point.
That's perfect, man. No, it's like building a moat around your content.
Exactly.
Yeah, because we've been using Jarvis and Conversion.ai a lot lately, and we're using it in a way to leverage the content we've already recorded. And this is a little bit of a rabbit hole, but the idea is that every content modality has a little bit of a longevity to it, or an easiness to go through. So audio and podcasting, it's honestly not the easiest to find the little bits and pieces that you might have heard maybe a year ago, or you're looking for an episode from 3 years ago. It's not as easy to find, but there are ways like YouTube, video's great, or maybe even use Jarvis to pull out some of the transcripts, writings from what you said, but then that could be published in a different way. You can almost like leverage the content you've created, turn in all these different modalities with these cool tools.
Yeah. We've been using Jarvis actually quite a bit to take some of the thinking process out of podcasting and actually get more systematic around podcasting. Yeah. One of the things that we always struggled with, and I know we're kind of on a side tangent now, but I love the topic. With Jarvis, we're basically plugging in like a piece of our transcripts from our episode and letting it tell us what the title should be of the episode now. So Jarvis is actually titling all of our episodes of all of our podcasts for us now. And the cool thing about Jarvis too is you could go in and it'll say write this title in the voice of, and you can actually put anything. The examples are like write it witty, or write it silly, or write it professional, or whatever, but you can actually plug in names. You can go write it in the voice of Frank Kern, write it in the voice of Gary Vaynerchuk, write it in the voice of Mr. Beast is some of the ones we've experimented with. And it'll actually start throwing out titles for episodes that sound like Frank Kern or Gary Vaynerchuk or Mr. Beast wrote them. So pretty cool stuff. And then we've also used it for generate some ideas of stuff to talk about on the podcast. And then we'll just riff on the ideas that it generates. It actually has an idea generator inside of it. So pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. No, this tech, I think it's a good thing to keep in mind as we're going through the whole thing.
Yeah.
So there's ways to leverage it, but also not get don't just stick with the norm, because the written content without much of a moat around it. And I'm thinking like, if you're a published author, that's a moat, it's going to be some time, but if it's just slapping up blogs and thinking that's going to last forever, definitely it's thinking a little deeper on how to be strategic with that.
Yeah. I mean, right after this, we're actually recording a handful of training sessions for our PodHacker members around how to use Jarvis for your podcast. So,
yeah. So, well, let's get into this journey part here. Is all super applicable there. And to what Rich just said in the tech is figuring out what's next. So this is this when we showed you Rich last time, I think we like paused and I don't know if you screenshotted this and put it on the wall or something. But,
I did.
Yeah, this map, it took us, I mean, we're like almost 5 years into our podcast, our current one, Hustle and Flowchart. And we started to realize it's becoming like this big Frankenstein of a beast, like this content system that we've created. And, you know, podcasting for us is at the heart of everything we do. But for you, it might be a blog right now. It might be YouTube, or maybe it's just email, you know, and that's fine too. Something that you're producing consistently as a piece of content. What this map is showing you is essentially what's the next step from that piece of content and what can that be turned into, those forms of content. Matt, you can break this bad boy down.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically everything starts with the podcast for us. So when we record a podcast, that podcast gets broken out into all different ways. Some make us money, some bring us traffic, some just keep our audience engaged. So the podcast, we actually have somebody that listens to every single episode and takes notes on the episode. So it's not like your typical show notes where a show notes might say like, here's the bio of who we're talking to today, and here's a few of the things we're talking about. No, these are like Cliff's notes of the episode. Somebody listened through the episode and went, this is everything we talked about. These are the tools they mentioned. These are the resources. These are the people they mentioned. So you can theoretically read the notes and get all of the same information that you would have gotten out of listening to the podcast straight from the notes. Those notes are actually the lead magnet that we give away for free as our opt-in. So when somebody listens to our podcast, our call to action is go get the action guide from this episode. Here's where you go get it. And they're opting in for the notes that somebody on our team took. Now, those notes, they're actually only available for a limited window of time. We make them available within 2 weeks of the episode going live. And then those notes are pulled off of the free opt-in, and they're locked into a membership. Our membership is $59 a year or $15 a month. And what that membership gets access to is all of the backlogs of all of the notes we've ever put out for any of our episodes. And so that's one of our monetization streams. The podcast turns into the lead magnet content. The lead magnet content turns into the content that our paid members actually pay us for. So that's one of the ways that the podcast content branches out. We're also on YouTube now. YouTube is a newer thing for us. We'll talk a little bit about YouTube throughout this, but YouTube, we're still kind of learning as we go here.
Well, Rich is probably more the YouTube expert here. So this is where maybe there's a chat later on about what you're doing.
We're still trying to crack a lot of the YouTube code. We've got the audio side kind of figured out. YouTube is kind of the rabbit hole we're going down lately. But the podcast break, we record all on video now. We're in a studio with lighting and backdrops and all that kind of stuff now because we want to put focus on video, and that helps with SEO. When people search for our guest names or our names, some of the YouTube videos show up.
You get all these like YouTube shorts now, IG reels, all TikTok. I mean, like we can clip to our eyes bleed, which we haven't done down yet, but there's a lot of cool things emerging in video. Yeah.
The YouTube helps a lot with the branding, because now we're being seen side by side with some of our guests. You know, we've had like Michael Gerber on, and we had Guy Kawasaki on, and we've had some pretty influential people on the show. And just, even though we're not in the same room all the time with our guests, just like seeing them side by side on YouTube, there's that branding, credibility, borrowed credibility element to it that's really, really beneficial. And then we also make affiliate sales off of YouTube. So if we bring somebody on that has a product and they talk about their product, we make some affiliate commissions from people searching around that product on YouTube. The podcast also gets broken off into a blog. The blog content is a little bit more teaser content to get them to listen to the episode. So it might say, you know, here's the bio of our guest, here's some of the things we talk about, but they're all kind of teaser content. They're open loop content to get them to listen to the episode. And we use that for retargeting and linking off to other stuff, and then also some SEO benefits. And then the podcast, we also email about all the episodes. So there's sequential emails that we do, which are essentially somebody gets on our list, and for 10 days, we're sending out a series of emails based on what they opted in for. So maybe they listen to an episode around affiliate marketing, and they opted in for the action guide to that affiliate marketing episode. Well, they might receive 10 days of email sequence specific to affiliate marketing. So we can actually trigger automated sequences that are very tailored to the exact content that they opted in around. So some pretty cool stuff that we're doing that all starts with just a podcast.
And just to like insert myself here for a second, it's not that it took many years for them to draw this diagram, just to be clear. It took several years to for this diagram to represent what occurs for them by them just showing up and doing a podcast. So they show up and do a podcast, and then people take what they just did, and all these other things are being populated.
Right.
So their job is just to show up and throw up, right? And then all these other elements of their business happen without them.
Yeah.
Right. So when you've built a business around a podcast and you've built the processes that these guys know how to build, what happens is that, you're growing your YouTube channel, you're growing the number of rankings you have, you're growing your list, you're making your blog more popular, you're fulfilling a membership, you're sending out emails, right? Like you're getting more, like every part of the marketing equation is being handled, and you're not like racking your brain, trying to come up with content, sitting and writing or doing whatever. You're just talking to interesting people and learning from it. And all this other stuff is happening in the background.
We've designed it in a way where we show up at the studio, the camera's already set up, the lighting's already set up, everything is ready for us. So we sit down, we press 3 buttons, and then we're recording. When the recordings are done, those files go into a Dropbox, and that's the end of what we do with the content. From that point, Jacob, who I think is on this call on our team, takes the content, makes it in, he edits it, makes it into a YouTube video, does the WordPress blog post, and then another team member, Sue, she goes and takes all the podcast content and turns it into the action guides and the actual show notes that get written up on WordPress. And then we have another guy on our team, his name also named Joe, who takes the same content and turns it into email sequences for us that are triggered based on the content. So it's very, we're very tailored with our email. So if you opt in because you listen to an affiliate marketing episode, you're going to see content about affiliate marketing. If you opted in because of an episode where we talked about podcasting, you're going to see more content from our list around podcasting. And that's all built by a guy named Joe Kearns, who's on our team, who builds all those automations for us. So our job ends after recording and throwing the files in Dropbox. That's the extent of what we're doing.
Yeah. So we basically
I just want to make sure people got that, because that's what, like, that's the benefit, like, of you having a format that allows you to create content really fast, like that is personalized because you're there, that is supported by others so that they're filling in a lot of the gaps for content, and then everything else happens like on automatic, right? And so that's just really powerful.
Yeah, man. And there's, this is where, Christopher, your question from earlier, this is how you differentiate. This is a step in the differentiating of all those other interview shows out there. Just by taking notes, for instance, this whole process right here, we've been doing this probably for 3 years or so on our show. And that, just telling people that we take notes on an episode, like, this is something most podcasters will not ever do. Typically it's just a transcription. But it's just maybe not thinking about, hey, I can quicken this listener's time, and they could still, they have the option to just read this if they don't want to listen to the whole episode, or we just tell them, hey, don't take notes on the thing. We already did the work for you. Yeah. So that's one way to differentiate. And
our goal is just to create the content, right? Like, our goal is to create the content. We don't really care what medium they consume the content in. Like, I don't care if somebody discovers us and reads the content, discovers us and listens to the audio, discovers us and listens to the YouTube channel. To me, the form in which they consume our content, I'm indifferent to. So we're just making the content. If you prefer videos, cool, we've got a YouTube channel. If you prefer audios, cool, listen to us on Apple or Spotify. If you prefer to read the content, great, get inside of our membership. We'll give you the notes for every episode we've ever done. We're still getting the same amount of exposure on our guests. We're still getting the same amount of exposure on our brand. We're still getting the same amount of exposure on the links to the various offers we're putting out there. I don't really care what medium you consume in.
Yeah, no, it's nice. So it's I don't know if I want to do the full animation here, but this kind of explains what you were just saying.
Right.
This is a Perry Marshall. It's called the Media 2.0 Media Maze. And we've been using this for a certain presentation. We asked him for permission and whatnot. This green circle here are podcasts, and what you're looking at are basically quadrants of different types of content out there into the world. You have live audio visual, you have recorded audio visual, recorded text, and then recorded or live text, more or less, like Twitter, LinkedIn, social media. But the idea, like with podcasting, if we could just land in every quadrant, then we're appealing our content to the most amount of people on the planet. We all find content, naturally gravitate to something over the others, or maybe there's just a circumstance, some context we're in, like, okay, well, we're going to grab this type of content over the other. So if you could show up everywhere strategically, at least in one spot, in each of these quadrants, you're looking pretty good. You're going to get discovered.
Yeah, the idea of this is, like Joe said, came straight from Perry Marshall, but the idea here was that if you figure out how to focus a piece of content in each one of these quadrants, then essentially people will kind of end up in your orbit, and it'll feel like you're everywhere. Like, this is sort of the map to be seen everywhere. If you put something, if you have content that's going out there that's somewhere in the sort of AV recorded world, something that's kind of text pre-recorded, blog posts, books, things like that, something that's sort of text and live, more like Twitter or, social media stuff that's live audio video, live streams like we're doing now. Now you could probably add stuff like Clubhouse to the mix, for sure. Things like that. If you're kind of focused on one thing in each quadrant, it'll start to feel like you're everywhere. When somebody kind of lands on one of the things in one of the quadrants, they're now in your ecosystem, and they'll start to, Perry says that they'll be in your orbit, right? Now they're going to start to see you everywhere in all of these quadrants because they discovered you in one of them. So that was kind of the idea, is you want to get people into your orbit. So try to have at least one thing in each quadrant.
Yeah. And just along those lines, the easiest way to gain more recognition, to build a brand, is being prolific. And being prolific, like being everywhere, is a function of either working insanely hard or having a system that takes one format and multiplies it in many other formats so that you are all over the place, right? And so, like, this is vital. Like, if you want to have a business that grows in notoriety, that is something that, like, at least is a brand in your marketplace, if not in a bigger context, then this is what's necessary now. And don't ever forget that most people get online to either, for one of two things, either to be entertained or to get some information. And so a podcast that delivers information in an entertaining way is really like checking the two boxes. And I think, guys, like, what we should do is we should tell people about your course. We've got an hour and a half worth of content to still go over. But, the natural dynamic of a live stream is that like the average listening length, it's not like a podcast where most people just like consume the whole thing. They hop in, they hop out, right? So I think, like, we should have a call to action like every half an hour. We should start one now. I'll throw the link on the page. And if you guys could talk about it, like, talk about your program, and then I'll share like what bonuses that we have, and we'll spend like 5 minutes on this, and then we'll jump back into more content.
Perfect. Yeah, let's do that. So you can share that link. And what I'll start with is going over this whole journey. So this kind of puts everything together. And I know we didn't talk about podcast specific stuff yet, but
yeah, we will.
Yeah, we're definitely going to hit on a lot of that. But this is essentially, we have a flagship course. I mean, after basically doing this for about 4.5 years, that's when everyone, we've heard enough people say, can you just package up what you're doing? This whole system, that big Frankenstein map you're looking at over here, and elements of like, okay, so what are we doing with this modality and all that? Well, that's why we created PodHacker. And it's kind of nice because we basically assembled it in 4 different quadrants for anyone. If you're not a podcaster, well, this could launch your podcast, and you can actually growth hack it, build the systems effectively, and then have multiple monetization streams once you're all done over here. So we kind of walk everyone through, if you're brand new, or if you're a podcaster already looking to enhance what you're already doing. Definitely, the systems are typically the lacking part for a lot of content creators in general, but podcasters especially. So, that could be the big thing to save a bunch of time, maybe start adding some different things you haven't thought about. But, all the way from building and launching to then engaging and building a great community, that's a big thing that's propelled our show, our brand, and basically, our network. Everything has been built from engaging a really cool community around us. And it's not only the people who are listening to our content or watching it, but like Rich said, it's all the different amazing people that could be guests that come through. Those are the people you want to stay in contact with and do deals with later on. You'll have the opportunity to go on their podcast, their live streams, or get featured elsewhere. Really honing in on this engaging part here, I think this has been kind of like the secret sauce for what we do, is like we're always collaborating in some way. Mm-hmm. We're just going to show you how we systematically do that once you bring someone on to, say, your interview show. Looking at you, Charles. Mm-hmm. It's like you can start to differentiate that way just with the way you treat your guests and what you do with them later on. And then amplifying, we're all about growth hacking podcasts. So maybe you could speak into these last two sections, Matt.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things that I think we've been fairly good at with podcasting is going and finding really unique outside the box ways to get more attention on the podcast, right? The name PodHacker comes from podcast growth hacking. So that's kind of been our thing over the years, is we've figured out how to growth hack brands and growth hack blogs and growth hack now podcasts. And so we've gone out and we've gone through all the other podcasting courses that are available out there. And the stuff that we do is not the stuff that other people are teaching, but it's the stuff that people are kind of doing behind the scenes that they don't want other people to know that they're doing to grow their podcast, right? So we're going out there and we're finding the ways that are like, all right, where are people paying to play? Where are people going and spending money on these platforms? We actually had to sign some like NDAs with some companies to actually pay them to have them promote our podcast. And, we actually got some permission, and we're kind of pulling back the curtain on a lot of those areas, but we're really kind of into the growth hack stuff. And so that's really what we get into in the Amplify section. We probably should have called it growth hack, but it doesn't make a good acronym of beam if we called it growth hack. So Begum didn't sound as good, but really the Amplify section is like, we're gonna show you how to growth hack the hell out of your podcast. And then monetize.
Wait, before you even go to monetize, just one quick thing there. Like basically everything on that previous page was an amplification, sure. and that really this goes so far beyond just podcasts. Like any content, like these days, the ratio should be 10% on generating it, 90% on promoting and amplifying it. Mm-hmm. So, the idea that you're just going to create some content and somehow magically it's going to get like all over the place, that's not going to happen without systems and processes in place to amplify it. And so this is the critical part. From monetization only happens in significance because of the amplification. And you only want to amplify something that's engaging, because what's the point of getting the word out about something that's boring that everyone bails on really early? And you can't do any of this unless you build. So to me, this makes total sense, and take over the monetization.
Yeah, and then the monetization, it's the same kind of thing. We do talk about a lot of the traditional stuff that people talk about, like sponsorships and getting support in those kinds of ways, affiliate marketing. But then we also break down our model of newsletters and paid subscriptions, and some of the more outside the box ways we're doing affiliate marketing on the back of this. And even the way we do sponsorships is different than every other podcaster does sponsorships. We command about 10 times the cost per 1,000 downloads that other podcasters do, because of the way we sort of bundle our sponsorships and do them in a different way. So we really kind of get into some cool rabbit holes on different ways to make money off the back of your show. Now, at the end of the day, when it comes to PodHacker, we didn't really set out to make a course. We were just kind of happily having a podcast and doing affiliate marketing and having sponsors on our show, and kind of just traveling that path and enjoying it. But it got to the point where people kept on wanting to know, how do you do affiliate marketing? You guys are really good at affiliate marketing. How are you doing that? Well, it all kind of starts with our podcast. How are you guys? How are you guys doing so well with SEO? Like, when I search for these different people's names and you guys keep popping up. Well, that all kind of started with the podcast. And so there was this realization that almost all of the success we've had over the last half a decade now has all stemmed from this podcast. And so many people were asking us questions that we finally decided to put it all into this forum that is now PodHacker. And I think the coolest part about PodHacker that we haven't even touched on is the templates. Like if Joe, if you jump over to the PodHacker membership up at the looks like you got the tab open already.
Yeah, Rich, I don't know if you were seeing some of that stuff that I was sharing just now.
Yeah, we were. It was on the screen, cool. And then it just got removed. Now it's removed.
I'm going to check another. We're going to open up the membership just to.
And while you're just a second here, and then we'll just show them that, and then we'll dive back into the content. We're going to have numerous times to explain more and more of what's involved, so we don't have to be as completely comprehensive. But one thing I did want to share, and then I wanted to make sure that you showed them this, and then also told them the price, because the price is much cheaper than I think most people would imagine based on everything that's included. But in addition to that, like everything that you're going to get from PodHacker, the other thing is that we're including like the best of all of the SOWs that we've done on podcasting, which includes an episode from you guys. It also includes Seth Green on how to recruit a cult of 50 evangelists to promote your brand for you for free, plus John Lee Dumas, the email script that gets me invited on other people's podcasts more than 50% of the time. Plus, this hasn't been created. We'll probably create this in the next 2 weeks, but I'm going to give people a tour of everything that is in this office and how we run everything here, everything from the tech and the equipment to the layout, and how I can be looking at you right now and yet still look at the screen and all these kinds of things. So with that, let's show them what's in the membership, and then we'll get back to the content, and we can always revisit all this in a little bit.
Yeah.
So let me add this to the stream. There you go.
Yeah, the only other thing I wanted to point out real quick is that everything that we've been talking about so far, we actually give the templates for. So all of the emails that we use to reach out to get sponsorships on our shows, the follow-up emails when somebody opts into the action guide templates, our show note templates, the how to invite a guest onto the show, the cold email outreaches that we'd send to invite a guest onto the show. All of that is just kind of pre-written and just handed to you. So that's all stuff that over the years we've kind of built and optimized and made better and improved upon. And now we've just kind of loaded them all into PodHacker. So now when anybody comes to us and says, hey, I want to reach out to get a sponsor, how do I do that? Well, here's a template. Just send them this email. Right. So we've kind of templatized and turned everything into like a checklist or a template that you can just swipe and use for your own podcast.
Nice. Cool. All right.
And before we go back to the content, what is the price of this extensive library that basically has everything templatized, processized, systematized, and basically hands-off like kind of system where they can recreate what you have, where you just show up and magical things happen?
$1 million. No, when you go to the link, you'll go cruise over there to a page that looks like the one on the screen there. So it should look just like that, and you could just click get started, or you could check out some of these cool testimonials, and Rich is actually right there on the bottom. Yep. This is very simple to get into, and it's very inexpensive. And I mean, it's $4.99 or it's 6 payments of $99. So choose the way you wish, whatever's comfortable for you. But there is a money back guarantee, all that. So you do have the ability to, run through it and see if this is for you. Guarantee you're going to open your eyes to a lot of new perspectives. Obviously, you're going to learn a lot on the rest of this live stream, but check it out. Definitely would love to have you. And there's a lot more where that came from too.
Yeah, we haven't even touched on everything we do for PodHacker members yet. So, but we'll get into that in a little bit, because we could probably spend a whole hour talking about the kind of cool stuff that's in PodHacker.
Yeah,
for sure. So let's dive back into the content, and then from there, take it away.
All right, let me share that tab again. Let's see, a lot of sharing going on here. Bo.
There we go.
On there. Cool. So we're picking it up at this little spiral here, Perry Marshall's media map. So that's, you see the whole point, all these templates, all these things is to kind of land in all these quadrants here. Again, still thinking of your own content. So I would just question, if you don't have your own podcast, you want to figure out how to show up in those quadrants. And, there's a lot of ways to do that. And then we get back into, obviously, that other map is more of the journey. So how are things connected? And do you currently have a journey for your content? Like, is there a journey for your listeners, readers, viewers to actually make their way to your offers, some other thing that you want to point them to, your cause, whatever the motivation is there. So,
and by journey, you're talking about basically how do your prospects find you first off, like whether that's through iTunes, whether that's through YouTube, whether that's through like any search engine because of the blog, whether it's an email that someone forwarded to another person, whether it's an email that was sent out by the person that you're interviewing on the podcast and sending out to their list to listen to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's from like the point of contact to then like, how are they going to get to know, like, and trust you? Are they going to get on your list because like they're going to opt in for the show notes, or are, you know, and then once they've opted into the list, what are they going to get to make them know, like, and trust you, and then ultimately see an offer and then start paying you?
That's right.
So that's what the journey is, from completely not knowing who you are to depositing money in your bank account every month because they're a fan.
Yep. You're creating super fans along the whole thing. And there's so many ways to monetize. So that's what we'll get into here. We'll deep dive a little bit more into what you explained, which is, you know, maybe it's starting to grow your list at first off of some of this content, like you were just saying, Rich. You know, this way we're talking about podcasts, but there's nothing to say a YouTube video can't direct to notes or some action guide or some freebie from there. Same with the blog post, of course. You know, there's tons of ways. We'll show how we're doing that as well. Some of the
and then also nowadays, right? Like, I hate to interrupt, but for this one, I want to. That, like, you know, there's been an explosion on YouTube of podcast clip shows. Primarily, I guess Rogan was the guy that really kind of got that off the ground in a big way. Maybe not, but it's the first one I saw. You know, so now most podcasts will have two channels on YouTube. One is a clip channel, one's the regular channel. So you could say like before the podcast, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff serving the podcast, whether it's the blog post, whether it's the clip channel on YouTube, you know, whether it's the full podcast on YouTube, whether it's iTunes, like, and, you know, all the other elements that potentially send people to getting on the podcast and listening to the podcast. So it doesn't start with the podcast. It starts earlier than that, but it's moving people to the podcast and then these other steps afterwards.
That's right. Yeah. And it can be looked at as like, the clip shows. We used to have a second show as well. You know, that was like a best of, just in podcast form. But whatever that is. And another way to look at the way that, I guess the way it's described here is almost like the way of production of content for us, you know, and how it's all connected. But yeah, I mean, you can see these are the notes Matt was talking about. So those actually go into a membership. So that's recurring. The beauty with this model here that you're looking at, it covers all of the costs for us to produce our podcast and help us actually do all of this effort. So, you know, it covers team costs. It helps us actually keep the engine rolling. We've never missed an episode. I think every 400 episodes we have notes for now, which is kind of ridiculous. I didn't think we were going to be able to pull that off. But each one of those things are a lead magnet, and it's an opportunity for someone to join our list, and then of course into the membership and beyond with what we have. So just as a little another format there, this just shows you kind of the idea of how our business is structured. And then things like PodHacker, of course, is like kind of a standalone product. And you can just think of that the same with your own offers. You can always have this platform idea and then spin it off into your own stuff after that.
Yeah, there's a couple things that we actually didn't even mention about the newsletter yet. Is that the newsletter, yes, it's monetized through recurring subscriptions, and we have members who are paying to get this physical print newsletter every month. But one of the other benefits of having this newsletter is that we can actually slide in ride-alongs and have sponsors of the newsletter as well. So, you know, we've got this newsletter. It goes out to about 500 people a month every month. And we can people will actually pay us to write up an insert and put the insert inside of our newsletter that goes out every month. So anybody who's on our newsletter, they get all of the notes from all of the action guides that came out over the last 30 days. But also inside of that newsletter, they might see, you know, a couple notes in there for various products that are recommended as well. Most of the time, those are sponsors actually paying us to get inside of the newsletter as well. So that's one of the benefits of doing this newsletter, is that when we go to sponsors, we can start to bundle stuff. We can tell them, you know, it costs this much per download for us to shout you out on the podcast, but also, you know, we can put an insert into our print newsletter that goes out this month. This is that much extra. We could put a banner ad on our website and rotate the banner on our website, so you're getting more exposure there. That's this much extra. And now we start to put together these sponsorship bundles for our potential sponsors. So all of this stuff is very like symbiotic. We're making money off the newsletter, we're making money off the sponsorships, and we're also getting the sponsors involved in the newsletter and, you know, creating additional income on the sort of crossover there.
Yeah. So,
and not only that, but like if there's ever an internet apocalypse, you have the contact info of all your customers. So like, and you have experience of contacting them monthly in the mail. So, you know, there are well, I don't think an internet apocalypse is ever going to happen. There are many times when you want to be sending stuff in the mail. Like when I did the only mastermind that I've ever done, which was a 1-year mastermind, it was $40,000. I didn't want that message to get lost in email. So we wrote a magalog and we mailed that to our entire customer list. And that was enough to, sell the program and, meet the sales requirements, and never having to really do much in email for it, because we knew that, when a message really has to get to someone, you want to put it in the mail. And, in this particular case, you are in the mail consistently, which is incredibly valuable.
Yeah, man. And this is where we learned it from all the direct mail folks, people like, Brian Kurtz, I mentioned him earlier. He was on the podcast and he was like, man, this is so smart because you're bouncing them from online to offline to online. And yeah, we're always getting stories. We're getting pictures like this. I mean, you got New York right behind there. Rich is fond of that place, of course. But this thing travels the world. So we have a distribution, print house, and they distribute. I think that's out of New York as well, state. I don't know, McManus Publishing. So if you're interested, that's who we're using. A lot of the direct mail folks, Doberman Dan, Ben Settle, they're using companies like this, and we're just applying that to podcasting. And this is how you start to differentiate again, and you create super fans.
Yeah, it's kind of like a self-liquidating podcast, right? Everybody talks about the self-liquidating offer with Facebook ads, right? Like our podcast, this membership, it's not, we're not making a killing off of this membership, right? I think it generates $6,000 or $7,000 a month for us.
It's the super,
but that's enough to pay for this office that we're in. It pays for all the equipment that we buy. It pays for the team that's managing it all. It pays for it pays for its own fulfillment costs. So, it pays it covers the cost of all of the production that you're seeing. And then most of our revenue is actually made off of affiliate marketing and joint venture deals and stuff like that. But the podcast aspect of it is fairly self-liquidating because of this offer.
Yeah, that's a really good point. This whole thing is basically liquidated because of the podcast and the systems. So yeah, that's how it's become over the years, which is nice. Let's see, we've covered a lot already. So I want to see if let's keep going down this path here, because connecting content to offers, some of this stuff could be pretty self-explanatory, but you can see this is an example of one of our show notes pages. We had Roland Frazier on, and he promotes he has his epic challenges that rolls out like every month or two. So that's just kind of a perpetual thing that we have as a promotion on his specific show notes pages. He's been on 2 or 3 times or so on the show, and they're actually well SEO'd for his name. So got you rolling. We're on the first page of Google. But that is free traffic for us because they're curious to explore what Roland's all about. But also we have promotions directly to their offers with these little slide-ins. We're using ConvertBox down here for doing all that.
One cool thing about this too is like that ConvertBox that's down there, you can actually dynamically change it based on whether somebody's on your email list already or not. So if somebody did a Google search for Roland Frazier and they found this episode show notes, they would come to the page and would actually have an opt-in form to get the action guide to this episode. Now, if somebody's already on our list and we mail to this episode, the slide in that pops up is to grab Roland's epic challenge. They're already on our list. So that little convert box that's in the corner will change based on the source that they came in through. So it's either capturing a lead if they're not on our list yet, but if they're already on our list, then we use that convert box to actually try to close some sort of sale. In our case, it's usually affiliate sales.
Yeah.
And just for the record, like you rank number 1 for my name after my Twitter, my website, then it goes Twitter, then it goes Facebook, then it goes Amazon for some of my reports, then it's LinkedIn, then it's Instagram, then it's YouTube, and then the very first listing that is not one that I owned is yours for my name.
Didn't even look that up. That's
nice.
Awesome. Well, there you go. I mean, that's the power of consistent content right there. And the fact that, show notes pages, we can get into what ours look like and some of the key things. Obviously, we can nerd out like crazy. That's what PodHacker's for. The link's on the screen, as you see there. So all of this stuff we're talking about, this is what's in that program. You know, you're just seeing little like splinters of why we get so pumped up to share this stuff, because it's always thinking about or out of the box, but you know, it's always connected to something. There's always a reason why we're doing this for specific show notes pages. Like for you, Rich, I mean, now that we know that, right. I mean, Steal Our Winners, if that's an offer we can keep promoting, well, yes, we should probably do that. So like we'll do the same thing, and then there you go. We'll just
I think there's some confusion though, because it's not that you necessarily sell in every podcast like Giancarlo here is asking. So let me just throw this up for a second.
Yeah, let's answer some
You questions. Always sell, for example, you know, every blog podcast, and how do you do it? So why don't you explain, like, where do the sales come in and where do they not, right?
We actually don't sell on most of our podcasts, right? Most of the podcasts are just, we're bringing a guest on, we're interviewing them. So we do 2 podcasts a week. One has guests, one doesn't. So our guest episodes, we're just kind of interviewing them about whatever their expertise is and having a cool conversation. There's actually not much pitching that happens on the podcast other than we might call out their show. Every once in a while, we will shout out some like affiliate offers that we use. We might talk about ConvertBox and be like, you know, you can get it through this link. Or we might talk about Steal Our Winners and say, hey, you can get it through this link. But I don't think we close a lot of sales by people listening to the podcast, going back to their browser, typing in the URL that we shouted out, and then making affiliate commissions on it. I don't think it flows that way. So most of the sales are actually made over on the show notes page, over from the YouTube channel, over on
emails.
Through the emails. Yeah. So think of it this way. We're using the podcast to find out what people are interested in and then selling them the most relevant things that we can think of based on their listening habits. That's kind of how we see the podcast. It's a way of us segmenting them and getting them to raise their hand and show their interests. This Roland Frazier thing that we were just showing. Oh yeah, it's the next strategy.
That's what we could talk about.
Yeah, the Roland Frazier episode is sort of a rare case where Roland was actually promoting a specific course, and we had an affiliate link, and he talked about the course on the thing. But most episodes, that's not the case. Most episodes aren't designed to be a pitch for an offer. Most episodes are designed just to get people to raise their hands and say, this is a topic I'm interested in. So we might do an episode with like Kevin Rogers, who's a copywriter. We did an episode with him where we talked about copywriting for a while. I think at the end, he might have shouted out his Copy Chief course, but that was the only pitch on the whole thing. But if you were to go to, you know, Kevin Rogers' episode and you were to opt in for that action guide when it came out, the email sequence you would see would probably have some emails related to affiliate offers related to copywriting, probably Copy Chief, but also anybody that has the copywriting interest. We've been promoting things like Jarvis, Conversion.ai to them. We've been, you know, we've promoted some copywriting books to that list in the past. So the podcast is more of a segmentation tool to figure out what products to put in front of them than they are the actual promotion tool itself.
Yeah, it's not like what I'm doing here for the most part, right? That, you know, like, because this is more of a live stream, it's not a podcast, it's not being uploaded anywhere. Like, maybe it goes, like, it's already being broadcast to all these different platforms live. You know, for strategic profits, this is a valuable tool. Like, just to give people reference, you know, we did that Troy Erickson on email deliverability. I think it was like 2 weeks ago. I bumped into Troy at Traffic and Funnels, and I think we've done over $100,000 in sales from just having Troy on this live stream.
Wow.
So, you know, between the live stream and then like the after effects on YouTube, which I'm not sure, maybe because it was email deliverability, but definitely had the most views of any live stream that I've done in the last year, like as far as putting it up on YouTube. But that's the impact, right, of being able to have, like, you're adding an extra channel. Like, you're adding extra channels to monetize. And, you know, it's like, before we, like, at Strategic Profits, we only had our email list. And that, like, you know, everything that we promoted had to be in our email list. Now, like, with the live stream having gained enough of a following, like, you know, several thousand people will have watched this by the time the end of the week, like 7 days later, you know, based on all the channels. It's just another way that Strategic Profits makes money. And it wasn't started for that reason. Like, I started it because, like, just because COVID was going on, I knew that Facebook was pushing live streams. So I just started a Facebook Live, and from there it's grown. And just like when I'm sure Matt and Joe started and they were doing those first episodes in their garage, it didn't automatically get turned into notes, and it didn't then automatically get thrown to YouTube, and it didn't, like, they didn't have the membership yet. So all these things happen over time. What you benefit from when you get PodHacker is really kind of all of the experimentation, all the things that they've tried and failed and scrapped, all the things that they did, worked, and improved upon. And so you're getting the benefit of their years in podcasting from the start. And that's incredibly valuable. For those that know me well, you know that, like, when I wanted to open up my hypnosis center, I paid a gentleman in Virginia Beach either $5,000 a month or $10,000 a month, I just don't remember, to work for him for 3 months. Wow. Because, like, I knew that, like, the alternative was for me to make a ridiculous number of mistakes for the first couple of years that I had the business. Instead, I paid him to work for him, and I left. I mean, I told him what I was doing. I planned on opening up a hypnosis center in Manhattan, and he was the only hypnosis center in the world at that time in Virginia Beach. Wow. So, you know, I paid him to get the experience because there was no one that was selling a course at that time on how to launch a successful hypnosis clinic, right? So the only way I was going to get that experience was if I found the only one out there and then paid them for it. And it's the same here. Like, you could, there's nothing that Matt and Joe are going to teach you that I imagine you couldn't figure out on your own over many years of podcasting. The question is why would you want to, when you could basically just plug in, use their templates, use their processes, use their recommended, like, vendors and resources, and be able to shortcut the process, not by a few weeks or a few months, but by many years. And, you know, if you value your time and you see how inexpensive they've priced PodHacker, then it seems to me like it's an absolute no-brainer. You know, there's very few channels that you can add to your business for this insanely low type of price. So anyway, I wanted to put it back to you guys.
That's great. No, and if you don't mind, can you share what I just plugged in?
Sure. Yeah. Sure.
There's something we haven't covered in the, so once you do join PodHacker, something we also do twice a month is we have 2 different calls, and an expert session and an open office hours call. And these are all live calls. It's a one-time fee to get in there for PodHacker or that 6 pay. But we continue these monthly or a couple time a month calls. We have experts on. So last month we had Molly Mahoney, or this month, I guess. And, she broke down how to use social media automation and all that stuff, and how it applies to podcasters, but also, the business behind podcasting. You can see we talk about some different tools. Jarvis was a big thing in here. Interesting things on Facebook that you should be paying attention to, or that we actually pay attention to on your behalf. So we're bringing in experts all the time, every single month on, went to the wrong thing. Right here. Yeah, basically the philosophy behind these expert sessions is they're not always people that are podcasters. In fact, none of the experts that we've had on so far are specifically focused on podcasting, but they have very specific expertise, right? So we had Kurt Molly on one month. We had Gert Malik on one. So Kurt Molly's a Facebook ads expert. We had Gert Malik on, who's an SEO expert, Joe Kearns, an email automation expert, and Molly Mahoney, who's a live streaming organic social media expert. And we bring these people on and we say, I know you don't have a podcast, or, podcasting isn't your thing, but given everything, what advice would you give to podcasters? So this whole live thing is like Kurt Molly is speaking to podcasters on, if you want to get into Facebook advertising, here's what I would do if I was a podcaster. Gert Malak with SEO. If I had a podcast, here's what I would do from an SEO perspective to really crank that podcast up. So we bring these sort of niche experts on, these sort of tactical experts in, and then we get them to map out exactly what advice they would give to a podcaster. And we do one of those every month. And then every month we also do a live office hours, which is a chance for members to join us, ask us questions directly. We'll answer them live on the call. We go over all of the latest industry news that's happened over the last month, stuff you should be paying attention to. We talk about a lot of these like acquisitions that are happening and, why it might be important to you. And
We go over the entire like podcast world. We share what we're experimenting with and what's working now, and then we answer questions. And we spend a couple hours every month doing that with all PodHacker members, and it's not even like a recurring fee. So that might be a decision we come to regret at some point. But
but maybe not, because it's us curating content again. It's just another outlet for us to be a little bit more tactical. So that's kind of a benefit for you in joining PodHacker. One-time fee, you still get this ongoingness to the whole thing. There's a community in there, so it's not like you're just kind of sat in there alone. You're hanging out with us and other podcasters or aspiring podcasters. So all that to say is go check it out. And let's continue on this bad boy. There's something I wanted to say too that you were mentioning, Rich, is you can almost like this whole mindset of we all have the ability to create a platform. We all have an ability to create that whole spider web of things we have, but we can leverage the platforms at our fingertips right now. So like Rich with YouTube and all the different outlets, Facebook for this live stream. For us, we have select outlets, but in general, when we wrap it all together, we've created more or less a platform for ourselves. So we don't care necessarily how someone finds us, as long as they're being led on the path to the next best thing. And I saw a couple of questions, going back to the question about selling, on a podcast. The way that we're selling, quote unquote selling, is in the descriptions area, all the other things outside of audio. We're sure as heck, giving them a next step. Yeah. Well, definitely always it's join our Facebook group. That also adds them to our email list. That's a standard call to action. And we have the action guides. So if they want a specific guide, they can get that. If there's an affiliate link, they're going to get that as well. We would reserve that in the parts outside of the audio that don't really, conflict with the
just answering John
conversation.
Carlo's question here. When you say you don't always sell, that means you don't even put a link to the product in the description area. No, we definitely put links. Whenever we have the opportunity to put links to something, we're putting links. So we'll have affiliate links in our descriptions and inside of the action guides and below the YouTube videos. And when we talk about products, we're definitely putting links to those products, and ideally affiliate links. Sometimes the people we interview don't have affiliate programs, but we definitely use links whenever we can.
For sure. Cool. So let's see. Let's wrap up this first section. I know we're going long on this first part, and then we can get in a little bit more of our process, or maybe Rich, unless you have some other ideas of what would be best. I want to answer some questions too. So definitely, if you have any questions or aha moments, things that you haven't thought about, perspective shifts, throw them in the comments. Ask questions, whatever it is. That's the stuff that lights us up.
Yeah. I mean, we present, we know how to present, but we much prefer answering questions and interacting. I think it's a lot more fun.
Yeah. So let me get back to the slides here.
Ooh.
Hey, let's talk about email and this whole thing, because we've been kind of on this side of stuff, talking about how we leverage email a lot. This will also tie in, because after this, I want to talk about podcast guesting just briefly, because I think that's a pretty common thing it's a pretty simple thing anyone here on this call can test out. Even if you don't have a show, and there's some strategy behind that can help out. But let's break down, essentially using email. This is how we kickstarted our podcast, to initially get some traction. We didn't rely on iTunes, or Spotify wasn't even a thing with podcasts back then. But we decided, hey, let's create our own platform, because we have an email list. We have we had a decent sized following, but it didn't mean that the following was into podcasting.
Right.
So, but we chose to leverage that. Shoot, I'm not sharing the. Am I sharing that?
Oh, sorry. Let me put it up on the screen.
All good.
There you go.
Sweet. So email is definitely the backbone of everything that happens after the audio or after a YouTube video. Everything is email list forward. And luckily, got this email expert, Matt, next to me that's been doing it much longer. But now we have an email team that's helping us just automate this thing like crazy.
Now we're working with an experter
emailers. Yeah. So, I mean, you maybe walk us through this, Matt.
Yeah, go to the next slide. I think there's more context here.
There is.
So let's see.
Well, this is a little bit more. I
remember what this is about now.
Go for it. Yep.
Yeah. So we're using ActiveCampaign as our email service provider, and one of the features they allow you to do in ActiveCampaign is if they click on, you can actually put like a pixel on your website, and if somebody visits a certain landing page on your website, it'll alert Active Campaign and then tag Active Campaign that you visited that piece of content on your site. So what we're doing is a lot of kind of back-end internal retargeting, where if somebody comes to, for example, that we actually have a blog post on our website all about this tool ConvertBox, which we are an affiliate of. And when somebody goes and reads this blog post about ConvertBox, if they're on our Active Campaign list, it will actually tag them in Active Campaign as we're interested in, or I'm interested in ConvertBox. So just by reading this article, we can trigger off a sequence of emails that then go and promote ConvertBox a little bit deeper. And we do this kind of thing with podcasts as well. Coming back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, where podcasts are kind of designed to segment people and get them raising their hands on topic interests. If, let's say, we drive them to a podcast about affiliate marketing, well, just them reading it, if they're on our list, we'll tag them as this person's interested in affiliate marketing because they listen to this podcast about affiliate marketing. We can then send them a sequence of emails that then promote products related to affiliate marketing. So we're doing a lot of internal retargeting using Active Campaign and tagging. So when they land on this page, tag them with they're interested in this topic, then the email system will trigger and send out emails with offers related to that product.
Oh, awesome to see Steve Dale here. He's a good buddy of ours, great member of PodHacker too. Yeah, sorry, man.
Yeah,
that's it.
That's the face.
That's the concept. So I didn't know if Rich had something to add to that, or could probably clarify it better than I probably said it.
No, I think that's good. But where do you? I'd love to ask you this: like, where do most people get stuck? Like, I would imagine that there are a bunch of people who like join PodHacker who have really never thought of like starting a podcast, and you kind of introduced the idea, they got excited and they joined. But then I would imagine there's a whole nother segment of people who like have wanted to have a podcast for some time, might have even taken some steps to try and get it going, and then found that there's this crazy learning curve of stuff to do to get everything up and running, and decided, you know what, instead of me playing around with this anymore, let me learn from experts. Let me get everything kind of already like trailblazed for me so that I can just kind of walk in their footsteps. And yeah, so what are those issues that tend to kind of snag people?
I feel like there's two places people get stuck, right? So people get stuck right before ever getting a podcast out, right? The sort of paralysis by analysis concept of, what equipment do I need? What do I even talk about? Aren't there too many other interview shows? Maybe I shouldn't start an interview show because there's too many of them out there, right? Like that is a pretty common objection. People just think like, I don't know, maybe it's a imposter syndrome kind of thing. I don't know, but people don't feel that they should start a podcast, or they feel they're not prepared enough to start a podcast. Like they don't have the right equipment. That's the first place. The second place is once they have a podcast going is really the growth. I think most people find that once you have a podcast, it's actually fairly easy to get guests. That's not the hard part. Sponsorship, once you get some downloads, let's say you're getting 1,000 downloads an episode or so, sponsorships actually become fairly easy to get as well. The places people get stuck are just never getting it started because they're in that analysis phase, or once it's going, they really, really struggle to actually get people listening to it. So that's where we get stuck, and we definitely have systems around both of those. So maybe those are some good places to put some focus on.
Yeah, a couple others come to mind. So on the pre-launch thing, a lot of folks will get in their heads of, like you said, kind of over analysis or over, there's too many shows like this. Think about your mission or your purpose of what you're doing in business right now. I mean, that's already unique in some regard, even if you are an ad, a Facebook media buyer, let's say, where there's a bunch of them, but you have a unique way of presenting yourself. That's curiosity, or that whole mission, wherever you're trying to drive people towards, with your solution, that can come out in audio form as well. That's just a piece of content. You can present your ideas. Other thing, you mentioned downloads and growing the show. I think a lot of folks think that they need tons of downloads. You don't. There's a friend of ours that runs a pretty big conference. I don't know if he wanted us to say the numbers of downloads, but I think he gets something like 500 downloads a month on one of his shows, and he was able to fill a 200 or 300 person event multiple times a year on the back of a show like that. So it's not a bunch of downloads that are necessary. It's the right people listening to your content. So
just on that for a second, Joe, when you start, you're going to be the worst that you're ever going to be, right? Like on day zero is you can only get better from there. And, I was close friends with Gary Vaynerchuk when he first started and got to see the progression of, what he eventually became, but he wasn't that when he first started. In fact, like if you can track down, I'm sure it's online somewhere, like the original winelibrary.tv spots where when he started, he wasn't very good and he got better over time. And, whether you put in the time and eventually get great and then get like a huge following, even if you don't do that, right? Like I would imagine that many of you would say, if you've been on a lot of these live streams, that you know me better than you did before, right? And that, like, even if you just spoke to the people that are on your list more frequently and they got to hear your voice, and if you're doing video, got to see you as well, that will make a difference. They will know you better, they will like you more, and they will trust you more. And that will translate into more sales. And then over time, as you kind of get into your groove and you're able to be more comfortable, like talking in an interview or however your show ends up being, then by just word of mouth from those customers, you're going to start gaining some traction. You're going to start gaining some momentum. And then if you amplify it, which you really should be doing, then that's the next step that really is the growth. It's like when I took over the failing clothing store that I turned around, like I was like in a little bit of a quandary, because on the one hand, the store was losing money and it needed to make more. On the other hand, the store was gross and embarrassing. And there was a reason why it wasn't doing well. And so like, do I try and bang the drums and get everybody to come into the store today, knowing that the store is crappy, but also knowing that the store is losing money and I need to get it to at least break even or better, or it's going to close. So, in this particular like rollout strategy of build and engage first, right? Like you build it, you engage with the audience you already have, no matter how big or small that is. And as you get the hang of it and then start putting in all the processes that amplify it that Joe and Matt have created, like now you're really in a place to monetize that amplification and monetize the engagement of your audience that you already have. And so I just wanted to kind of lay that out there that, regardless, like Joe and Matt were saying, like, even if you never have like a top podcast and Spotify is not offering you $100 million or $60 million, like it's still a win if you're talking to your audience more frequently, because they will know, like, and trust you more, and they will buy more from you. Because the more context you have, the more top of mind awareness you have, the more likely it is that they check back in with you when they're making a purchase.
Bam. That's a mic drop right there. That was good, man. Well, actually, Rich, I'm kind of curious, man. I know you and I had chats about getting a podcast started, and this was prior to the live stream. And I mean, what was in your head as like a stopping, like, I know we talked about like the conversation flow and just chatting with someone and preparing for guests and whatnot. Like, were there a couple things that just stood out in your mind as kind of roadblocks even before the live stream?
I would say that it was just more like putting all the pieces in place, like on the amplification side, and like whether I wanted those wheels in motion when I was also trying to get other wheels in motion. And, just to give people a better picture of what I'm talking about here, and I've said this like on numerous live streams, so many people shouldn't be surprised by this. Hopefully, I'm very proud of the content from Steal Our Winners, but I feel like the way we deliver it is not up to my standards and where I want it to be. And so for the longest time, like I've been talking to the team about that, and they've been working on it and didn't want me to see what they were working on until they got it to a point where it was close to being completed. And I recognized that in that move to us delivering the experience the way I wanted it to be, that there would be a lot of like moving pieces in order for that to happen. Some of them like overlay with what like a really successful podcast would be, but some of them are just extra, right? So, in the past, for example, every Steal Our Winners segment was done on Zoom, and then I just threw it in my Dropbox and people took it and got it transcribed and created an action guide. Now, though, like more stuff is happening in the background, although people haven't yet experienced it, where like our video editor here in the States looks at it. He makes recommendations to video editors in the Philippines, and they're cutting the most like sexy parts and they're bringing it to the front, because the new homepage of Steal Our Winners will ultimately look like Netflix, regardless of whether you're signed in or not. Nice. If you're not signed in, you're going to see every segment has its own thumbnail. Every segment can be previewed. Every segment, when you preview it, shows like a little synopsis of the summary and what upside you can expect. Every contributor has their own page. Every, it's a total game change.
Yeah.
And so for me, like what I was just saying, like I knew I had to line up all these resources just to deliver what people are paying us for. And I felt like we needed to do that first before we put the resources into something free, right? Like, and then like the product doesn't live up to as good as the podcast, right? So that was part of it. And then also, just quite frankly, like what I was saying about my store, I felt the same way here. Like, do I really want to be banging the drums and telling the whole world to check this out when I know it can be 10 to 20 times better, because like the way that we're delivering it right now isn't ideal. And just for enjoyment purposes, I'll share the metaphor that I shared with my team. I was like, look, guys, I feel like I'm traveling all around the world, like finding the absolute best dishes that have ever existed. And we're putting it all into a buffet. And I want that buffet to be like an extremely pleasant experience where people get to walk through the buffet and pick only the dishes that most like align with their palate, so that when they get back to their table, they have a plate full of the best food from all around the world that is exactly what they like. But are we doing that? No, we're not doing that. I'm going around the world. I'm finding the best dishes. I'm putting it in a buffet. And what are you guys doing? You're taking every single dish and you're putting each dish on a separate plate. And then you're bringing all 300 plates to the table. And then we're shocked that people are overwhelmed or overloaded or frustrated, or that like anything else, right? Like until the experience of receiving Steal Our Winners is in line with the amount of effort that I put in to actually create Steal Our Winners, I'm not interested in doing anything else. And so like that was really like why we didn't, but a lot of the stuff that we had to do is stuff that like a compelling podcast would have to do, as far as the editing and stuff like that. Not that that's necessary, but like I certainly didn't want to do that on the podcast side. And then people join and the product is like for half of what the podcast was, right? Like if anything, it should be the other way around. So that was part of it. But it is intimidating. Like I don't, and that's why I'm so like thankful and grateful that I know you guys, because like, I have zero idea, right, how to get my podcast in iTunes. I have zero idea of how to get it on all the other platforms. I have like zero idea of what the best artwork is and where I should be focused on, like as it relates to the podcast and all these other things. And these are all the things that, I know that you guys know like the back of your hand, that I'll be able to benefit from, or my team will be able to benefit from through all the templates and everything else, or me being able to contact you guys and get, like, oh, just look at this episode or look at this piece and you'll understand exactly what you need to do.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's and that's why I wanted to ask you is there's a lot to it, especially if you have a business already, things are happening, you're busy. That's the point here is, not to just give you more work or your team more work, but actually like here are the systems to build out more of a platform on top of what you already have and really do it in a strategic way, but aligning with your business goals. Yeah. Like it shouldn't shake the boat of anything you're doing already. It should amplify what you're doing. And it's just going to add in more revenue streams and ways to grow your list and follow up with folks. So
more questions for you guys. Like, are there any specific podcast hosts that you recommend and why?
I love Rogan. I know you do as well. Yeah. Matt does. So we don't need to talk about him. I like Roland Frazier specifically because of the way he asks questions. I mean, the guy was an attorney, I guess always is an attorney. The way he thinks is just like, I think there's so much to learn from the way he's approaching a conversation.
Yeah, I really like Jordan Harbinger. I think Jordan Harbinger is a really great interviewer. I think he asks really good questions that other interviewers don't tend to ask. And I think one of the things we aspire to do on our own podcast is when we bring guests on, we'll go and listen to the other podcasts those guests have been on, and we try to find gaps. We try to go, okay, what hasn't this person been asked yet across all these other podcasts? And I think Jordan Harbinger is one of the best in the world at doing that specifically. So he's another one I would pay attention to. And
Christopher, I think it was you that
well, Christopher's looking forward to being the worst that he can ever be.
I love it. Well, that's awesome. We'll help you out. And I like your background with the hotel.
And Giancarlo says, question for Rich and guest: for someone that only do emails, where would be the description area from your blog or video be? Would it be on the PS of the email in this case? And whatever links you put on your description area of your blog or video, is it related to the topic of the email or not necessary? If I understand this correctly, I would say not necessary. That let's see, for someone that only does emails, where would the description area from your blog or post be?
I have an idea.
You put that in the email or no?
We do sometimes. It depends. So I think what you were saying, Juan Carlo, is maybe email is basically your consistent form of content. So I would figure out how to take that meat of the content, the value of that content, and then see how that can turn into another content modality. Like we were just talking about, it could be reading through as a podcast, but maybe adding more to it, with your perspectives. And then the call to action could be to join your email list with some freebie, whatever that could be, an action guide or notes of that, or maybe just take them to your blog. It could be like a distribution way, but using the content. I think that's what I gather.
Yeah.
Question.
So Cam has a good question. I noticed you guys have a subreddit for Hustle and Flowchart. Do you find that to be a beneficial use of energy as far as traffic for the podcast?
As use of energy, yes, because it uses zero energy of ours.
That's right.
So we do have a subreddit. That was one of our experiments, and we do kind of talk about the results of that experiment inside of PodHacker. But the subreddit is completely on autopilot. We actually use IFTTT. If this, then we use IFTTT. So every time a new podcast episode comes out, it automatically posts it to that subreddit. As far as the amount of engagement that subreddit gets, there's not a ton, but as far as, effort off of our backs to make that subreddit keep going, there's really none. It's just kind of like a glorified RSS feed in another place.
Yeah.
Got it. So this is just a statement.
Oh, it's true.
Thank you, Abel. Then a question for you guys.
Yeah.
Is this something that you help people with, like in the program, or do you assume that people already have a general idea? Like, how do they decide a topic for their overall podcast? I think is what she's saying, not like a specific podcast, but the overall theme.
Yeah, the theme of the show. I mean, so it goes to what you're talking about, but also the type of show you're going to do. I would say primarily what we chat with folks who have an interview based show primarily, but you can do solo shows. So if we're talking about formats, it could be like we were talking about with what was it, Juan Carlo, with the emails. It could be a solo show talking about perspectives and things he's already emailing, and that could be how a podcast is created. It could be like a shorter podcast. When it comes to I think the big thing is always building on what you already have. So what are you already creating? I mean, the idea here is not to necessarily create something new from scratch that stands alone. It should be somewhere that you already have momentum. You have an audience that kind of likes, and trusts you already. And if not, then...
Or it could be just an area that you're really, really fascinated in, and you use the podcast as that sort of learning ground around that topic.
Right.
I would say that the number one criteria is it's something that you can talk about for an extended period of time. Because if you want your podcast to go somewhere, it could be a year or two before you get the traction you're hoping to get out of it, right? It could be a long-term thing. Some podcasts, get big real quick, and some podcasts are a little bit more of a slow burn. So you got to be prepared to have it be something you talk about quite a bit. So you got to have some sort of passion in it. And our first handful of videos in PodHacker, we do kind of cover how to uncover what you should be talking about on your podcast. But those are kind of the general rules of thumb is, it's got to be something that you're going to want to talk about for a while. If you've already got some traction in an area, we were already doing a lot of digital marketing and tactical and affiliate marketing type of stuff. So we just talked about what we knew to start, and that made sense for us. But I've had the ideas of I'm a total real estate noob. I want to get into real estate investing. So an idea for a podcast could be a real estate podcast from the perspective of a newbie interviewing people.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to be able to talk about it for inordinate length of time. You have to be willing to listen, and be willing to learn. Like, and one thing I do want to say really to everyone, regardless of whether you pick up PodHacker or you don't, that like the one mistake you should not make is to think that podcasting has already passed you by. If podcasting has already passed you by, then YouTube has already passed you by, and every other channel has already passed you by. And that's not a very effective way to think about it. In fact, I've also shared this on live streams earlier. I won't share who it was, but a well-known guru, when I was telling them that I was thinking about doing a launch for the manifesto, said, "Oh man, launches are so played out already." And, that was in 2006. Wow. He had thought the boat had already sailed, and because of that, now he works for someone else. I won't say who it is. But like a guru that is still a guru, but now is under someone else's umbrella. And, just because like there's been 2 big Spotify deals, that's the beginning. Mm-hmm. That's not the ending, right? And not every show is going to be acquired for 60 or 100 million, but it could be for $1 million, it could be for 2 million, it could be for 5 million. And that opportunity is certainly there. There are opportunities for big podcasts as well. It's really like YouTube and podcasting are the new channels of entertainment that have pushed cable to the side, have pushed a lot of other and network TV to the side a significant amount. And so, definitely is something that no one should think the moment has passed. Well, and go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're good. I mean, this is exactly right. I mean, Misty Barnes, I saw a couple of comments here, is she's afraid she's too niche with her hair loss. You being a hair loss expert. I don't think so. More niche than
I don't think so either. I found this guy who I watch, Derek, More Plates, More Dates on YouTube. And he saved my hair. I've regrown some of it because of stuff that I've learned from him, like micro needling before I put Rogaine on and stuff like that. Wow. Look, when someone recognizes that they're losing their hair, and then I recognized I was losing my hair and it didn't really bother me. And then it all of a sudden started to speed up. And I started to notice oh geez, it's like you become extremely passionate very quickly, and are consuming a ridiculous amount of information. Yeah. So that's a very passionate group. And there's probably a ridiculous amount that people who are losing their hair, male and female, that would be very curious in. There was a good question here that I thought by Fell Pony Adventures. How much of your income is automated?
Ooh, that's a very good question. Well, we talked about what our main jobs are being the content guys. We're curators and the talkers of the podcast. So
I guess it depends on your definition of automated, because there's nothing that we're really doing in our day to day where it's we do this and then income comes in, right? It's for the most part, we built all of these systems and the income is generated on the back of all of these systems. So, I mean, it's pretty much, from our perspective, all automated at this point.
Yeah. The goal, everything we do has a system to it. So we're never going to just create a piece of content to create the content. Like any promotion we get behind, it's planned out with our team. We're all aware it's connected to something else we're doing. And it's typically around something on the podcast that you've seen already.
I mean, our day-to-day is this kind of stuff. It's either recording podcasts together with guests, doing live streams like this, doing our live sessions to our members. It's just a lot of content creation and talking to people. So, I mean, if you consider that work, then, that piece isn't automated, right? We're having these discussions, but most of our systems are where all the income's coming from.
So yeah, I mean, and we're always thinking about amplifying and then the monetizing, like you said, Rich. We built all the systems, we engage the groups, but then we're always looking to amplify what we're doing. So I'd say more of our job is maybe on the hunt, looking for new strategies, vetting them out, testing them out, that kind of stuff.
I have a confession. My real name is Rich Schefren #7. I'm a clone of Rich Schefren. And so Rich is actually by the pool right now, relaxing, and his whole life is automated.
You are beyond Jarvis.
Just kidding. But yeah, you know, when it comes to making money, pretty much everything of yours is automated. You just have to show up and do your shows. And that's generally like it is for me, except yesterday and today, I got slammed with a bunch of presentations, and now I remember what it's like to have to work hard, and I don't like it. So I'm looking forward to Wednesday afternoon when my life gets back to its normal routine of me just doing some interviews and having the business grow without me having to do much else. But there are breaks every once in a while to get some real work done.
Yeah. I think, there came a point for us, and I think with you too, Rich, where you sort of elevated yourself to the face of the brand, but there's still an underlying business, but we're kind of the face of the brand now, and we kind of operate in that world.
Yeah, I'm just the talent that.
That's right.
So let's talk about the course again for anyone who's joined us in the last 45 minutes or so, and give people a rundown of what it is, and let's kind of bring up the sales letter again and show people all the different segments and what the promise of the course is and what will happen for them.
Cool. Yeah, let me just share this, and we'll show the actual page itself. Let's see. Cool. Put it on there. Whoop, we don't want that one. Cool. Yeah, that would be the same one.
Open Pandora's box, and we'd be inside a box that's inside a box that's inside a box.
So go check out the link. It's probably on the screen. I can't really look at it because we'll do that whole thing again. But as we said, it's a no-brainer price to get ready. Or to get started in there. There's a couple options. It's much lesser than you probably imagine. But if you go down here on this page, you'll probably recognize some fellow friends of ours, Ryan Dice, a digital marketer.
That's my favorite video because I'm 2 feet taller than him, and I walk out on stage and I just completely eclipse him. And it's actually a pretty hilarious video if you watch the whole thing.
It is. Yeah, it was a little awkward of the stances, but it's a fun one. Go check that out and see what you think. But it's pretty cool to hear him say they launch a lot of great stuff, but he's like, we do it better, us, Matt and I. So it's pretty cool to hear that. Roland, I've mentioned him a couple times. He's kicking ass on his Business Lunch podcast. You should check it out. He's definitely very far past 60,000, and he has a unique way. He's started off with our strategy. Now he's getting a little fancy with it. But you can check out what he had to say about it. James Tramco, I'm sure you guys have heard or know about him. Out in Australia, he's been doing it for, I think he's up to 4 million downloads now. This podcast still going strong. He's been kind of a mentor to us as well in the marketing. Matt McWilliams, probably know him from Rich as well. Affiliate manager for a lot of stuff. George Bryant, a lot of cool. If you go down here, a couple other names in the podcast world. Chris Kremitzos at PodFest. If you're ever thinking about going to a conference, I would definitely say this is our favorite. Podcast Movement's another good one. PodFest is just amazing. So Chris, he's a good buddy of ours. You can check out, again, the access to the world-class marketers. This is essentially, you get access to not only us, but all the experts that come in through at least once per month, but we're adding in guest training from other folks all the time. We've just got new training today.
Well, we can't get all of the experts to coordinate a live 2-hour deep dive, but we do have some other experts that come on and create a 30 to 40 minute training with us on their particular expertise, and those aren't always live, but we do the live ones once a month as well.
So we're always bringing in different perspectives. The whole idea is not to just have it be the Matt and Joe show, but we did definitely kickstart it with our system and what works well and what other people have used. But we want to get a perspective from other people. Everyone else is doing some cool stuff, so we put that all inside of PodHacker. We talked about the monthly calls. We have 2 times a month. We have it once a month, expert sessions. The other time, 2 weeks after that, our open office hours, where Matt and I are basically riffing on the coolest trends that we're seeing in digital marketing, but also podcasting or YouTube. So creator marketing.
Yeah. Anybody who joins today will be able to join us on that session because it's next Tuesday. It's a week from today.
That's right. So I would say if you're thinking about PodHacker in general, it's a blend of digital marketing. That's our roots first, mixed in with this collaborative, creative podcast kind of stuff. So it's all just kind of mashed together. We talked a lot about the systems, strategies, all that stuff. There's a lot of done for you in there. We're sharing our resources. So if there are services that you need done for, if it's podcast editing, there's actually a lot of tools that are super inexpensive, leveraging AI. So a lot of folks don't even need an editor these days, which is nice. So if that's your objection, just kind of toss that to the side. There's ways to get started without someone out there doing expensive growth hacks. All the 4 pillars, we've been showing those, the beam, and tons of video lessons, of course, step by step. But if you want to check out some more details, go to the page. The link's probably on the page there or on the screen. But there's also some case studies here from folks who have done some big things. So this guy, Tyrone, he's out in Australia. He's in the real estate space. And the guy he claims he's doubled his income on the back of his podcast and leveraging a lot of what we taught him, mainly around affiliate marketing. And I now know that, and he's also increased his downloads quite a bit, which is substantial. I know the guy is now doing some pretty wild investments, some big investments. So I'm sure this has surpassed that. A couple other things you can just check out, all the different downloads, Lisa Beyer, she is a PR expert. She went hardcore with her show. She said she was up to 50. I think she's up to like 150 episodes now. Yeah. And it's been like a handful of months. She's just crushing it with what she's doing over at her 2 podcasts.
Well, Lisa, she's a PR expert. She actually gets people in the news and in magazines and just in the media in general. And she's actually next month's guest expert.
That's right.
So we're doing an expert session all on how to get your podcast in the media and, on TV and getting people writing about it in magazines and newspapers and things like that. So that'll be a really exciting expert session that we'll be doing live in August.
Yep. Got Brian Powers over here. He's doing stuff in the parenting space and also as a CPA podcast. So we're getting a whole, we got real estate over here. You have, what was he doing over here? Yeah, social entrepreneurship and nonprofits. You have PR and digital detox. You got parenting, CPA. You got Steve Dale. He's on the stream. He might still be around. He's in the contractor space. So he's talking to contractors and that's how he's going to grow his business, retain more clients. And you can check out what this guy has to say as well on the bottom of the page. So
why don't you show them all, because it's so impressive when you show them the template library. And while you're doing that, let me just explain what we're adding to the mix. We're adding the best on podcasting from Steal Our Winners, which includes a great episode with Matt and Joe on how to turn your podcast into a profitable business. So more deeply in some of the stuff that we've talked about today. In addition to that, you're going to get Seth Green, how to recruit a cult of 50 evangelists to promote your brand for free, which is very much tied into the podcasting approach. And then John Lee Dumas, which he'll share an email script that gets him invited on other people's podcasts about 50% of the time. Plus, I'm going to do a video tour of this studio here, which is my home office, and kind of take you behind the scenes, and you can see the craziness that exists behind me, which is very not what it appears, like what you're seeing right now.
That's always the case.
Yeah. You'd be surprised. And so that's what we're including. And look at all these templates. And, this course is like the equivalent of every course out there that's like a $2,000 course as it relates to podcasting, but it's not $2,000. It's not even $1,000. And it is less than $500 if you pay in full. And explain some of these templates.
Yeah. So again, these templates are pretty much, and I want to clarify something. So there's this templates page, which is literally all of the templates that you get inside of the members area, but the templates are also in line with their module as well. Right. So if we're like in the amplify section talking about some traffic tactic and there's a template that's required, it's within that module as well. But we do have that templates page that's just kind of like, here's all of the templates that are available to you inside the members area, just so they're all in one easy place to grab. But this is, everything that we do in our business. So reach out emails to sponsors, the agreements that we have our sponsors sign with us, the various WordPress plugins we're using, the Dream 100, which isn't something that we even talked about, but we probably still should.
We have time.
The research that we do into guests. We have a template that we use to research our guests.
And do you do that, or does someone on your team fill that out for you?
We actually have somebody in the Philippines who is actually doing all the guest research for us and filling that out for us.
They kickstart it. Matt and I still do it.
Yeah, we still do a lot of the final research right before we jump on the calls.
We obsess over that, but that's being curious.
Yeah, all of the initial research, though, is like somebody goes and finds all the resources for us, gathers them all, and puts them in front of us. And then we like to really deep dive so that we can find, what hasn't this person talked about on previous shows. We want to be unique, right? We want to find the novel topics. But this is what these templates are, is all of the emails, all of the checklists. This, you can see down on the bottom right, the sponsorship email to get a sponsor, the sponsorship agreement. So once somebody agrees to be a sponsor, we send them that. We run a Facebook group behind the podcast. We even give you the rules template so you can use the same rules for your group if you want. The subscription icons that we use on our website to subscribe on the various podcast platforms. We just give you the buttons because we had them custom made. So pretty much anything that you could need, we tried to make it as plug and play as possible.
Right. And because so many of these things, you've probably spent a lot more than $500 on creating, but because, you did it not for the course, but for yourself. Therefore, like, you're including it, but that just creates that much more of a bargain. And so what is the price of this?
So the price, it's low. So here's the thing, Rich, and you watching, is we were reluctant to even make this course. I mean, that's the God's honest truth. It's not, but we poured our heart into it. So it is $4.99 if you pay one time, or it's $99 for 6 pay. So I could just go to the link and you can see the checkout page. It will look just like this. The 6 pay is already pre-selected, but if you choose to just get it out of the way, $500, less than $500, like you said, Rich. We're just not the types to I don't know. We just want to give the best.
We're not
stuff
salespeople.
We love to just curate and have cool conversations. And you know what? Enough people bugged us and to get this out there. So we just want to keep spreading it around to people that will benefit from it. So
yeah. And once again, we strongly recommend this. These are the guys that I go to for podcasting advice, and many other insiders go to for podcasting advice. And you should be thinking about a podcast. Definitely you should have a presence. Every business ultimately should have a presence on YouTube and in a podcast. And it's more of the future as far as the way people consume media. And you will either partake in that and potentially benefit greatly, or you will be left behind. And so whether you ever buy PodHacker or not, and I strongly suggest you do, but even if you don't, please, for your own benefit, understand that the media landscape is changing, and that you really don't want to be someplace in a couple of years from now regretting that you didn't get started. The best time to start a podcast was 5 years ago. The second best time is today. And so, if you didn't start it 5 years ago, well, then today is the day, and you really should give it some significant thought, because where else can you launch a whole arm of your business that can feed your business with prospects, leads, revenue, and everything else for less than $500 all in, right? And that's pretty insane.
Yeah, man. Well, Rich, thank you.
So let's just answer some more questions, I guess, right?
Yeah, if you got the time, we're not going anywhere.
Yeah, let's give it another, since we started 15 minutes late, let's go for another 15 minutes. I think this is a good question. I mean, it's totally outside of my wheelhouse, obviously, but what are your thoughts on a Bible study podcast? Since I don't know very much about the Bible and I don't know very much about podcasting, I will reserve comment on this.
Well, here, one thing I will comment about that. I don't know a lot about that niche myself either, but when I was doing some research, this was probably a year ago, but the top podcast categories, I think religion was the #1 category for most listened to podcasts, was the religion sort of category on iTunes. So there are more podcast listeners in the religion space than almost any other podcast space. So I'll say that much.
I agree.
The market's there.
We'll just think about, yeah, if you have a bond with that audience, I mean, you're likely going to have an audience or a listener for a long time. So that's the idea. I think it's a good idea, Daryl.
So do I. A good idea for someone other than me. That's for sure. Here's a Facebook user that says, this is the third time you guys have come up in different circles. So we're going to take that as a sign from the gods and universe to act on it. Very cool.
A circle we showed here where we're trying to be everywhere.
Yeah, it's working. Thank you. Whoever you are.
We do try to practice, please, but thank you.
And so, making sure that everyone gets value out of this live stream, regardless of whether they buy or not. I know that anyone who does enroll is going to get insanely massive value, especially for the price. It's insane. But what are some general tips and strategies that you could just share for creating a curated content podcast, assuming that these people will never see you again and never come across your stuff, which I find very doubtful, but just in case that happens?
Yeah. A couple things come to mind. So we've done this for affiliate marketing, where we'll just create episodes, and for a little bit, we had a podcast on the side that was like specific for a product even. So you can just come up with tip strategies and kind of curate content specific to a product maybe that you want to promote, and it's just super niche down, but those people might seek you out for whatever that thing is. Another one I was thinking of, you see it's on YouTube a lot, are reaction type videos. But maybe on podcasts you could talk about what maybe you saw something popular or timely in your niche. You could start, that's curating content from YouTube or the news. Mm-hmm. And that could then just be a podcast of your own. You can have your own spin and have a consistent schedule, have an expectation of what you talk about so your audience is familiar, and then lead them to the next step, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
Have you seen any along those lines? And just like, I'm curious, I don't know how it would be done exactly, but I'm curious, like, if anyone has tried this. Like, so some of my favorite emails that I receive are emails that are curated content that like someone who I follow says, these were the 5 best articles I saw this week online, period. Right. And it could be anything. Right. Yeah. But I like that person. And so I'm interested in what those top 5 articles or whatever that they came across that week that they're sharing. And I just wonder if anyone's done that in a podcast. Yes. Like we're going to explore the top 5 like pieces of content that came out this week in this niche, and kind of very similar to like what people are doing in email, but just like, if you don't have content, you don't have guests, you could still have a podcast just by giving summaries and your 2 cents on those articles.
Yeah.
Right? Like
3 examples come to mind, actually. One of them actually isn't in existence anymore, but there used to be a podcast called Dig Nation with Kevin Rose and Alex something or other. But Kevin Rose is the founder of dig.com.
Matt Malenweg is who you're thinking of.
Yeah, Kevin Rose founded dig.com, but he's done a whole bunch of podcasts with Tim Ferriss, and that's probably where more people even know him from. But before he was famous for being buddies with Tim Ferriss, he had a podcast called Dig Nation with this guy Alex, and basically what they did on that podcast was they went on Dig, which was kind of the same exact concept as Reddit at the time. Might have even been predated Reddit. I don't know the timelines there, but it was bookmarking. Yeah, it was personal bookmarking, very similar to what Reddit is today. And they would go and look at the top 10 like most upvoted pieces of content that were on Dig for that week. And they would just riff on the top 10 most upvoted things on Dig that week. And that was the whole podcast. And it was brilliant. I loved watching it. But I think, due to time restrictions and them starting other businesses and stuff, they kind of phased it out over time. One that's still active right now is one called Pod News, which podnews.net is a really great resource to get all of the latest news in the podcasting world. But he actually turns all the latest news in the podcasting world into a daily podcast. So each episode's only 5-7 minutes, something like that. And he's just reading what the latest podcast news is. And yeah, we're actually doing kind of the same thing with our own PodHacker news. But
keep going.
Yeah, so we have PodHacker News, which is kind of very similar to what they're doing with Pod News, but we're putting our own spin on it with some tactics and things like that. And then the third example, which is really, really cool, is the Optimal Living Daily guys.
That's right. So if you check out, this they have at least 5 podcasts now, but it's called Optimum Living Daily. If you go just on whatever, Spotify or something, these guys, we know them personally. They just read other people's blog posts with their permission, but in the different categories that they have shows around. And
it's a daily podcast. So every day they're going and finding a new blog post and they're just audibly reading it, right? They're just hitting record and they're reading the blog post. And that's the episode for the day. It's been about a year since we've talked to these guys, but last time we talked to them, they were getting 4 million downloads a month on their podcast. and all they were doing was reading the blog posts that they found interesting. They got the permission, right?
Yep.
Like all of the bloggers that they were syndicating, they were going and asking for their permission first. We know this because we're one of the blogs they syndicated. But they go and they just read a new blog post every day, and that is their daily podcast.
Now, the beautiful thing there is they have the downloads, so they were able to work some partnerships out with places to get that monetization dialed in because they struggled with that. So even with a lot of downloads, they had sponsors and stuff, but still weren't making what they wanted to. So without getting too far to the rabbit hole and details around their specific solution, the idea there is that they were able to find a partner to then, basically handle all the monetization for them. So Rich, to your point, it's like they've created their own platform and they figured out people who wanted to monetize their platform. And it didn't need to be Spotify buying them out for hundreds of millions, but they sure as hell have a great, basically passive income source because they have other people reading the podcast as well. It's not even them.
Yeah, it started as them, but over time they hired other audio recorders to just read the blog post and record them. So it's not even reliant on their personalities or their brand anymore. I mean, I guess still their brand, but their personality isn't even an aspect in it. They hired other people to just read the blog post now.
Yeah, and look, you guys, you're just limited by your own creativity. Yep. Like you could have a podcast that's all about like internet marketing, but it's all about like what's going on in the top Facebook groups of internet marketing each and every day. Like what were the big posts yesterday? Or like there's really like so many ways you could slice it and dice it. Obviously, that would only make sense if you're in internet marketing and you're teaching internet marketing and stuff like that, because why would you want that audience if they're not related to what it is you do? But you could do that in any area. And, whether it's Facebook groups, whether it's blog posts, whether it's summarizing like all the podcasts out there, like there's podcast notes that I'm a fan of that kind of like gives me the details of like stuff that I missed, because the alternative is like when I'm watching Joe Rogan, like I was when I was in Nashville working out like on the elliptical, I had to hop off the elliptical like 4 times because he was interviewing Andrew Haberman, or I forget the guy's Haberman. He's the professor of neurobiology and ophthalmology at Stanford. And he gave like 2 supplements that boost your testosterone 200%. And like, 2 supplements he was telling to Joe, like that would help him like fall asleep at night, which I have a problem with. And just, I'm like, well, I'm jumping off and ordering them on Amazon as soon as possible, knowing that like, oh, I don't want these things getting sold out before everyone else buys this stuff. Cause like, Rogan has got a ridiculous number of people listening. And, it's just that powerful. And so I know I'm being redundant here, but please, 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 people recognize that this is part of the new media. And like, it's only a matter of time until like YouTube and podcasts and video podcasts just totally eclipse what's out there. Like you'll have Hulu and Netflix, and then you'll have YouTube and podcasts, and the networks. People don't want to be on someone else's time. What all of the ones that I just mentioned have in common is that the user is in control of when they watch and why they watch and how they watch and like where they watch. And network TV isn't like that, and cable TV isn't like that. And, for the most part, that's one of the reasons why they're both dying. And people want to consume on their own timeline, at their own speed, at, all these kinds of things. And so we are still in the transition stage, and it's really like the time has not passed. In fact, it's only getting more ripe. And I imagine there will be bigger deals that happen down the road. And it's just really good timing. And I'm really happy to have you guys here kind of giving people a way that they can jump in and not have that learning curve in front of them.
Yeah, man. I think if anything, the fact that Spotify is acquiring all of these podcasts, Joe Rogan, the Dax Shepard podcast, Call Her Daddy, the Barack Obama podcast, all of these shows are going to Spotify is just proof that there's venture capital money going there. The big tech world is looking at podcasts as the next big thing. So, I think we're still in a very, very, very early stage. I think 10 years from now, we're going to look back at podcasting and where we are now and go like, holy crap, look how far this thing has come. I think we're still in an infancy here.
It's one of those, I feel like with the platforms kind of fighting for attention and like to race to get these features out, like live audio for Facebook, and they're going to start promoting podcasts now as part of groups and pages, or one or the other. But all this stuff's rolling out super fast. Spotify's overtaking Apple, in terms of in the US. They've pretty much done that everywhere else throughout the world. I mean, I think all of this is to our advantage, being the podcasters, the creators, because they need a content creator.
They need the creators, and like the woman from Call Her Daddy. I don't remember when that podcast started, but it didn't start that long ago. And when her and her partner at the time started, they got an offer from Barstool Sports where they each got paid like $75K a year, and they were ecstatic because they were unemployed, they weren't doing anything. Fast forward just a few years later, one of them is getting $60 million from Spotify. So she was super stoked to get $75K because that was more money than she thought like she'd ever make. And, a few years later, she's getting $60 million.
I mean, that's the best possible example, right? Because you can look at Joe Rogan, you can look at Dax Shepard, you can look at Barack Obama, and they had some advantages in the podcasting, obviously. But Call Her Daddy, that was a sort of,
grassroots, or I don't know how
rags to riches kind of story.
Yeah, and she started more recently than any of those other ones, like as far as with no clout, no nothing, and she just resonated. She's very good at what she does. She is a good interviewer. I watched a show about her, and I was like, wow, because I wanted to understand when someone comes from nowhere and gets paid $60 million. I want to, in a medium that I dance around, I need to understand what's going on.
Yeah. They're starting to pick up YouTubers now too. I think David Dobrik or someone like that just got acquired by Spotify too.
Well, that's what I was just gonna say is YouTubers that's where we're looking at where the puck is going, kind of thing. Is our content starts with podcasts and probably always will, but this video element is definitely not to be lost. We're building out multiple camera angles. We're getting an editor right now. We're trying to find someone great. But essentially creating mini documentaries through a long form podcast like ours is into a less than 10-minute clip with B-roll and, highlighting the key thing of whoever we talk with or the topic. And it's for that whole thing is distribution. Now we can leverage YouTube and the algorithm and there's so many monetization channels there, but also exclusivity deals, sponsorships. I mean, you can just go crazy with it, but you got to get the foundation set here. And that's why PodHacker, that's why we created it. There's a bigger mission to it, but let's all start here and harness the podcast thing because it's a lot easier than, trying to wrangle in the YouTube engine all at once too. But this is going to help you build and get to that point, create that process.
Totally agree. So I think we should kind of wrap things up. So any last things you want to say about PodHacker that you didn't get a chance to say because I railroaded over you guys or something like that?
Man, you've been feeding us good gems throughout the whole thing. I think that the thing is just to follow the path. So when you join there is a journey that we lay out. And let me just share that one more time, what that looks like. Actually, let me stop that one screen and share. Sorry, there was another tab. All right, not to go to oblivion again. There we are. So this is the members area, the dashboard, right when you get in there. We tell everyone to start right here, obviously. You have the button. So everything, it's kind of like the 80-20 of the course is right in line. So if you're thinking this is a lot to bite off and handle, it can be if you look at it that way, or you could just bite-size chunk it all the way through. So highly recommend just literally go from start to finish, and there's buttons along the way that you can use and see how far your progress is going. So this is going to get you started as fast as humanly possible. And I would just say stick with it and really leverage, when you get in there, make sure that you're hopping on the every other Tuesday. We have the expert sessions, some new expert from our network, our circle. And Rich, we might have to dig into some of the Steal Our Winners experts and bring them over here too.
Yeah, my pleasure. And I'd love to do it as well.
Yeah.
I have a question that totally don't know what your answer is going to be. But if the answer is no, it's something probably you should consider because I imagine that it could be a nice upsell for your program. Do you have people that will facilitate all this? Like someone that will actually do a lot of the legwork? Like let's say someone joins today, but they're just, for whatever reason, they don't have a team yet. They also don't like, so graphics are difficult. This is difficult. Like everything's a challenge for them. Like, do you have like someone that they could pay that like knows the ins and outs of your course that can kind of lead them through like getting done the things that need to get done?
Like a PodHacker concierge in a way.
Yeah, like a concierge or like project manager or something that kind of like helps them get it all done.
Luckily, we have a lot. We don't have anything official, but I absolutely love that. We do have the service providers that we recommend. We have a huge pool of folks. So if anyone ever gets stopped by anything in the course, there's tons of ways you reach out to us.
Yeah, we do have people we can definitely refer anybody to do any of the steps in the process. We have a person that we refer people to actually do all the building and editing of the podcast. We have people that we refer people to for any sort of media buying, growth hacking kind of stuff. So we have a handful.
If you have a virtual assistant, then that's all you need, because you're already giving them all the contacts of where each piece needs to get done.
But
can get done.
We do, yeah. But I like the concierge idea because some people just don't want to even think about that part, and have someone really with I like it. So, I mean, our community could probably tap them and they're there.
But if you have a VA, then they can serve that role because of all the sources to get everything done you're providing. So very cool.
Add your team in there, of course. We're not shy about that. If you have a team, it doesn't need to be you going through this whole thing.
And at this point, I think it kind of goes without saying, but we also have a Facebook group for just PodHacker customers where Joe and I check in every single day. So if anybody gets roadblocked on anything, they can go into the group, throw the question in there, and we're pretty much in there once every 24 hours or so to answer questions.
Got it. All right. So the price is $4.99 if they pay in full. It's $99 a month for 6 months if they do payments. Is that right? $99 a month? Yep. And we're throwing in the best of podcasting from Steal Our Winners, plus a secret VIP tour of what goes on in this crazy room here. And plus you'll get the continued support of Matt and Joe as they consistently update and add more each and every 2 weeks to the platform, whether it's a guest or themselves. And then if anything changes, your plan is obviously to update the platform to kind of stay in line. Since you guys are podcasting, you will know if anything changes and will help people make any changes that are necessary.
Yeah, man. That's one of the things we pride ourselves on with those monthly live sessions is keeping people keeping their fingers on the pulse of what's going on in the podcasting world. So if you're a PodHacker member, you're going to be pretty damn in the loop with everything that's happening right now in podcasting and YouTube and
digital marketing as well. It's kind of that blend. So you're getting both worlds in there.
Very cool, guys.
Sure, you do a little. You got to get the B-roll of you. I know you do a cannonball every night after you're done with work. So get that on the office tour as well.
Get that and the. And apparently, at least when I posted my picture of me topless like that on Instagram, who knew? Like maybe I should be a fitness influencer. I got more comments and emoticons than any other post I've ever done. So
that's awesome. You should
that's kind of interesting.
Instagram reel, do a little dance, and you'll get even more.
Yeah.
That's what I hear at least.
This has been great, guys. So I look forward to returning the favor, maybe doing something for your PodHackers, and that'd
be cool.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Let's keep jamming, man. So thank you everyone for hanging around with us so long too.
All right, guys. Adios. See you. Higher profits and beyond.